Something interesting happened as I was eating my supper during the end of the day here as the light wanes. I had realized that as I took my first bite, that I had left out a key ingredient. And that gave me pause, and I realized something profound, which it seems is apt to happen after the death of someone foundational to one's life, such as my father. If you have seen the prior video that I made after his funeral, this is a continuation of that. What I realized as I was eating this meal is how that missing ingredient very much is an analog to what it is to lose your father or your mother, or both, as in my case now. Because what happened as I was eating is I noted that that missing ingredient resulted in me enjoying the other ingredients more, even though that one that was lacking, was quite important actually to the dish. And then I realized that it's the same way with the loss of a loved one. And this is sort of connecting dots here, because what I'm really talking about is how different aspects of my life feel different now than they did before he died. And eating is one of those things. Every meal that I've eaten since his death has felt different than they did before. The same dishes may be slightly differently prepared because I don't use recipes, and so I always have a little bit of spontaneity in every dish, which is basically how I love it. I like to live my whole life that way. But nevertheless, even though the meals are always slightly different, they are of a kind when I'm making a certain dish. And so suddenly a dish that was quite similar, if not quite identical, to the last time I made that sort of dish, suddenly the experience of eating it was radically different for me. And it feels to me almost as though his energy has been infused into me, so that now when I eat a dish, it's like I've eaten it for the first time, because I'm tasting it with his perspective. Now, this is most likely a very short-term effect, as the shock of the loss and the novelty of it wears off. But in the meantime, I'm really enjoying this sensation, because it makes me feel even closer to him. And it also, and this is the reason I'm sharing this with you now, made me realize that this is an aspect of our life in general that we really could focus on. I'm hearing an owl far in the distance. There's no way the microphone is picking it up. I can barely hear it. But that's an aspect of life as well, to be able to, in that very same way, to be able to imagine, simulate the loss, not of another human being in your life per se, although you could if you wish, but of anything, so that you can further focus your other energies, if that makes sense. In the same way as having an ingredient lacking from a meal makes you potentially, as I just did, focus more, thankfully, I suppose, gratefully, for the experience of the other ingredients, for their contribution. It makes me think now of that common wisdom that says that when someone loses a sense, for example, if they go blind, that their other senses become more heightened. And so one could say that you could exercise that in a simulation fashion. It's almost like the way that our eyes dark adjust as the light wanes. So too we can do that for the experience of living itself. I'm very deeply grateful for the time that I spent with my father. And although the earlier part of my life was very troubled in terms of our interactions, the peace that has come to me now after his passing, because of the 13 years that I cared for him at the end of his life, has given a new vitality to me in terms of the, I guess you could say, redeeming quality of the last years of his life with me. I'm not sure if that's going to help any of you, but I feel good for having shared it from my little winter indoor garden here as night falls. Which seems like an apt metaphor, does it not? Be well.